This is the old Pick Six podcast, and this is Sunday Night Super Friends. That's Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson, and this is the Sunday Night Super Friends Week 7 NFL Recap 2023 edition. So here's the plan in case you're new around here or maybe you've forgotten. Going to hit our 10 top takeaways from Week 7, the biggest plays, the best players, the missed calls. Producer Harry might have some thoughts on that. Some one-loss teams went down. Some one-win teams got going. Shout out to McCorkle Jones. But first things first. Remember, give us a old thumbs up if you're watching on the YouTubes at NFL and CBS. And of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you never miss a show. All right, boys, let's get to it. I'm going to start at the link. That's in Philadelphia, Breech. So the Eagles and Jalen Hurts are coming off that 3-interception loss to the Jets. And even though they were 5-1, we talked about this last week, we were wondering when that offense was going to look like it did last season. Meanwhile, the Dolphins had used the first month and a half of the season to outrun hapless defenses to all manner of scoring records, except the one team on their schedule with a winning record. They went to Buffalo and got their doors blown off. Cover your ears, Harry. So here we go. They go to Philadelphia. And look, there were injuries on both sides. There were a ton of penalties by the Dolphins. I thought the Dolphins hung in there. I thought they were going to win this game. It clearly didn't turn out that way. The last 10 to 12 minutes were all Philadelphia. So, Brinson, I'll come to you first. Can we trust this Dolphins team as they're currently constituted with the understanding that Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey are coming back?
And Devin Achane should return as well. You would think maybe a little with Teron Armstead should supposed to come back too, I think. So a lot of key guys missing for a team that has been very good this season, now 5-2 on the year. I mean, I think to answer your question specifically, Wilson, yes, we can trust the Dolphins, but I do wonder if they beat the Chargers, the Patriots, the Broncos, which you beat the Chargers by 2. It's like, congrats on having air to breathe. You're alive, right? Like you beat the Chargers by 1 score. Good job. The Pats, despite today, we'll get to that in a minute. You know, that's not like an incredible win to beat the Pats by 7, even on the road, even on Sunday Night Football. The Broncos, they punked 70 on them, so we'll give them credit for that. And then the Giants and the Panthers, like they're two. Harry and I were talking about this before we were doing some recording stuff for other pod features, and like he's like, you know, will the Dolphins show up in this game? Like this big game. The last time they had a huge one like this was a couple weeks ago against the Bills. And they did show up in the sense of like, it felt like the offense was operating like, you know, nicely at times. The running game couldn't get going. And you sort of wonder, like, if that running game isn't going to work, like as Chris Collinsworth kept pointing out, they had to resort to gadget plays in terms of to get the run game going, like little like sort of like pseudo jet sweep type stuff where Mostert's coming around on a Tyreek Hill fake, and so like that's concerning. And then you know you need a defensive touchdown on a kind of fluky pick 6 to tie it up at 17-all, and then the Eagles pull away and score too late. It felt like the Dolphins could have won the game, but the Eagles, and this is where I think the biggest concern is Breech. The Eagles looked like a much more physical team. And it felt like the Bills kind of did the same thing to the Dolphins. As much as we praise the Dolphins' speed and their, you know, flashy nature and ability to break off big plays, it's a big, big concern if you're going to get out-physicaled by better teams, conference, non-conference, whatever it is, especially if we're eyeing, you know, January, February, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Brinson, finesse is fun until you get punched in the mouth and then can't really recover. I mean, that's like me being in the boxing ring with someone twice my weight where I dodge a couple of his punches, then he hits me once in the face and I'm knocked out, match is over, it's done. I will say right now, I don't trust the Dolphins against good teams. I talked about it a little bit on the podcast, the Power Ranking podcast last Tuesday, just that you look at the teams they've beaten. Every team they've beaten has a losing record. We have now seen them play 2 teams with a winning record, and they have lost those 2 games by an average of 21 points per game. That's 3 touchdowns. And so, yes, they were missing people tonight, and yes, they did have some bad calls go against them, but the flip side of that is you looked at the Eagles' domination. The Dolphins only scored 17 points. Jalen Hurts personally gave them 10 of those. He lost the fumble that led to a field goal where the Dolphins didn't get a first down. They just went 3 and out and kicked a field goal. And then obviously the pick 6 on a pass that he probably shouldn't have thrown. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it really feels like Miami's offense produced 7 points here. And so the Eagles defense is good. That's for sure. But I think part of this also was that the Dolphins got bullied on the Dolphins defense did. I mean, obviously the brotherly shove works on everyone, but when you're putting together a 6.5 minute drive in the fourth quarter because your defense can't do anything, that's a concern. So I think right now the Dolphins have enough. They're going to beat the bad teams. They're going to beat the Raiders. They're going to beat the Commanders. They're going to beat the Titans. Like, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I am not worried at all about this team getting the playoffs. They're going to get to the playoffs. The question is, what's going to happen in the playoffs when they're playing teams like the Bills and like the Eagles, and they are playing good teams? Wilson, that is my question.
I think this actually...
One drive over 50 yards. That is a big concern with that Dolphins offense.
Yeah, to follow up on that. So a couple things, and you guys are both right. You're not wrong. And Harry, this is a little glimpse into passive-aggressive Breech. When his team isn't playing or not doing well, he loves to take shots at other teams that are doing well. Typically, it used to be me and the Steelers, but since you're the high on the horse right now, watch out.
And the Steelers are 4-2, and Breech can't figure out why or how.
Yeah, I can't either. But here's the thing. So one offensive touchdown by the Dolphins. Brinson, you sort of touched on it. No Teron Armstead, the left tackle. Connor McGovern, no center. Isaiah Wynn went out in the first quarter. Lester Cotton came in and immediately got a hole that brought back a big play. And I think that affected the running game more than anything else. Shout out for Chase Claypool. He got on the field, so I'm surprised I didn't save the game for him. But I'm not making excuses with the injuries because every team has injuries and they can point to them, but they have some pretty big ones. So if they get Teron Armstead back, they get Connor McGovern back in the middle of that defense, and Jalen Carter made himself very familiar with the folks of that offensive line. They get Xavier and Howard back. They get Jalen Ramsey on the field for the first time. I think that looks different in the division. Now, to your point, Breech, it may not change anything when we get to the end of the road. But I think the positive for me is that we're not talking about Tua being the issue. Because a lot of times in recent years, it's like, well, Tua can't stay healthy. Tua won't get rid of the ball. Tua is doing everything to move that ball, move the team up and down the field. Jalen Waddle went out with a back injury for, a third of the game, and he wasn't quite himself when he came back. Again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying when they're at full power, they're hard to stop. But I had the same thoughts you guys did when I was watching. Like, this team, they're not as tough as the Eagles are, and we were taking a lot of shots at the Eagles last week for the way they played that game. I give them credit, and this isn't a conversation about only the Dolphins in the sense that we're not giving credit to the Eagles, but the focus of what we're talking about here is what can we take away from this in terms of what it means for the Dolphins' future. I feel pretty good about the Eagles.
FYI, Mike Garofalo of NFL Media just tweeted out a video of Jalen Hurts hobbled. He's like, Jalen Hurts clearly battled something tonight, was hobbled as he was running off the field. I don't want to read too much into it, but Hurts played really well. 23 of 31, 279, 2 touchdowns. The interception was off just a fluke pick 6 there. AJ Brown with a monster game. Dallas Goedert, another also a big game. But man, week 7, Jalen Hurts hobbled isn't great considering the number of times that they run this brotherly shove and the push tush. I think that's at least. I think the Eagles, but to Breech said, the Dolphins are fine. They're going to get in the playoffs. Eagles are fine. They're 6-1. They've stacked a bunch of wins on the easier part of their schedule. It's going to get harder as we move forward. Jalen Hurts a little banged up, but this is a deep roster, a very talented roster, and they've won these close games in ways that we sort of didn't think that they would. So yeah, I mean, Philly is in great shape. I think Philly and San Francisco through 7 weeks. And San Francisco plays tomorrow night, of course, but or Monday night. They sort of are who we thought they were. There's no reason to be concerned about them.
The Eagles?
Yeah. You okay with
Philly and San Francisco?
Well, San Francisco, we can talk about that later. I mean, I don't know if I feel great about the way they play.
I just meant the top 2 teams. Like, it was like you were looking at the NFC and you're like, all right, like even if the Eagles regress a little bit, they're still gonna cakewalk to the playoffs because they have a really deep roster. We believe in what they've got. And that's sort of borne itself out. And we see the passing offense kind of come alive tonight. And you realize that the Eagles can, and this is what we learned last year, is they can win in different ways. The running game was fine tonight, but not great. The brotherly shove is unstoppable, and they can win in the pass game if they have to.
All right,
yeah, except just real quick, Jalen Hurts, if that's anything.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Gardner Minshew ain't there either, yeah.
You got Marcus Mariota there as the backup.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts hurt would be bad.
And Tanner McKee out of Stanford. Don't forget him, Breech.
Do not want to forget him.
He's pretty smart because he went to Stanford. All right, moving on. We are going to Maryland. I love Maryland. Baltimore Ravens. Who doesn't love Maryland and crab cakes? So last week we're like, all right, which Ravens team, the same conversation we just had about the Dolphins, which Ravens team is going to show up from one week to the next? And in preparing for this game, I was all in on the Lions like everyone else. You can memorize the talking points at this point. They scored 14 or more points in the last 4 games. The big issue with their defense was giving up nothing in the run. They literally had given up 388 yards in the run game over the course of the season, which was historically great. They were getting after the quarterback by rushing 4. All the things that would make you concerned if you were the Ravens, especially since the Ravens Breech historically find ways to lose games in the fourth quarter in new and exciting ways. This game was over shortly after kickoff. I think it was a 7-play, 75-yard drive or whatever. They scored a touchdown, the Ravens did, and that was a wrap. So, as Harry notes in the rundown, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can read it here. Only the Ravens can beat the Ravens. Is that correct?
I mean, I don't think that's correct. We saw them lose to the Steelers 2 weeks ago, your Steelers, and only score 10 points, and that's the...
Yeah, but wait,
feels
let me stop
feels
you.
like we put that on the Ravens. I mean, I don't know.
You know how they lost that game? They dropped 27 passes.
And Lamar threw like an injury interception.
And drop passes happen, just like injuries happen, or whatever you put it on. It's
but drop passes are like, that's beating yourself.
All right, let's go. Let Breech make his point.
But you still only scored 10 points, so maybe you scored 17. It's still, we're talking about a team that scored 10 points 2 weeks ago. That's my point. No, but I mean, I've said the Ravens are the best team in the AFC North right now. I picked the Ravens to win the AFC North this year, and I had the Bengals and Ravens in my AFC title game in my preseason predictions. So I have been all about the Ravens all season. I think this is a good team. They finally put it all together. And, obviously there was going to be some adjustment period with Todd Monken's offense, and it looks like it took exactly 7 weeks for this thing to get adjusted to, because Lamar Jackson was out there just slinging the ball. His receivers weren't dropping passes. And now that we know how scary the Ravens offense can be, if this is what they are going forward, if they consistently do this, they might put up 40 next week because they're playing the Cardinals. So if we see this for a 2 or 3 week period, then I'll be convinced that, bam, Lamar Jackson has mastered this offense. But again, if you forget about the Steelers game, they only scored 19 against the Colts. So there's been some games. I mean, even last week against the Titans in London, they scored 24. They kicked 6 field goals. So the offense has been getting better every week. And if they consistently do this, then this team is scary because they play the type of football they can run the ball. They can, and if Lamar Jackson's thrown for 357 yards, that's equally scary. So yeah, I think the Ravens have the potential to be one of the most dynamic teams in the AFC. I'd probably put them at number 2 in the AFC right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. So
what's interesting, and I actually only noticed this because fellow podcast host Katie Mox is in a fantasy league. We were texting about a trade that she got offered in an expert league, and I won't rat out who the expert is that offered it. Was like trying to trade with her, but he's trying to acquire a Ravens receiver in the process. And I was like, man, that's kind of like it was just bizarre. But I looked at it, and the Ravens' schedule coming up is so conducive to this offense exploding. They have the Cardinals next week. Cardinals 31st defense coming in this week by DVOA. Very bad defense. Tremendous defense. The Ravens should be able to throw the ball at will against them. Seattle, number 1 run defense in football. We should see the Seahawks. We should see the Ravens be able to throw against them. The Browns, of course, very good defense. So that'll be a low-scoring divisional game. The Bengals the week after that could just turn into a shootout. We've seen those Bengals-Ravens games explode before. And then they're at the Chargers, who, you could end up in a 41-40 game or something like that. And I think that's interesting, the schedule, because when you look at what the Ravens did in this particular game, Lamar just in an almost borderline immaculate game, right? I mean, 155.8 passer rating, 21-27, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, ran another touchdown in, didn't have to run much, only 9 times for 36 yards, distributed the ball to a ton of dudes. Gus Edwards was the leading receiver with 80 receiving yards. He was on 1 catch. 6 targets for Zay Flowers, four catches, 75 yards. 6 targets for Mark Andrews, 4 catches, 63 yards, 2 scores. And then 7 targets, 5 catches, and 49 yards for Odell Beckham. Like, this is sort of what we thought we might be getting from this Todd Monken offense, is a nice, more even distribution, a more aggressive passing game, the ability to put the ball down the field, let Lamar look like this. Man, if you can find him 10-1 or higher for MVP, go bet that. I think I saw 8-1 on DraftKings earlier. He was like 15 to 20-1 in that range before the week. This schedule is conducive for the Ravens offense to really put up big numbers. And I think Lamar, especially with the Eagles beating the Dolphins, Lamar could be the MVP favorite in 3 weeks.
All right, let's talk about the other team on the other side, because the Ravens look fantastic. I don't even know if we need to look ahead to their schedule to see how they're going to do against bad defenses, because they just beat the crap out of a really good defense after the game. Head coach Dan Campbell said we got our asses kicked, and he was right in every single word he used in that sentence. But Breech, I'll ask you the same question we just asked about the Dolphins and the Ravens, actually. This is going to be a recurring theme on the show. Where does this leave us with Detroit?
All right. Well, obviously, I was concerned about the Dolphins. I am not concerned about the Detroit Lions for 2 reasons. Number one, they play in the NFC North. So they lose this game. They are still 2.5 games up. And even if the Vikings win on Monday night against the 49ers, which doesn't seem likely, they could maybe. But even if the Vikings were to win that game, the Lions still have a 2-game lead. So this, in that sense, doesn't hurt them. They still feel like the best team in that division by far. And then the other reason is that, like, Lamar Jackson just does this to NFC teams. It's a shock to the system. They only see him once every 4 years. They have no idea what they're going up against. They have no idea how to prep for it. Lamar Jackson, fun fact, is 16-1. 16-1 in his career against NFC teams. He just dominates NFC teams. And so if I'm the Lions, I take the film, I set it on fire, I throw it in a trash can, I dump it on Wilson's front lawn, and I move on with life. And that's it. And that's you couldn't stop Lamar Jackson. Great. There's no other Lamar Jacksons in the NFL. You don't have to worry about it. And if you get to 10 wins, you're probably winning this division, and you're already halfway there.
You're 5-2. Your only 2 losses are to the Seahawks in a close game at home after you beat the Chiefs in week 1. And I think maybe that's my one concern with the Lions here, right? They're 2 losses. And look, like, you lose at Baltimore, it's not a big deal. You get blown out by Baltimore, a little bit concerning, but the 2 losses for the Lions come, 1 in week 2 after beating the Chiefs on the road, and then 2 in week 7 after going to Tampa Bay, just sort of, 20-6 is the final, but you look like a dominant team. And I'm guilty as charged here. Like, everyone's crowning the Lions as they're in the club of the elite teams in the NFL and the NFC. And then they go and just get their ass handed to them by the Ravens. I mean, it's so I worry a little bit about maybe the Lions reading their own press, given the timing of the 2 losses. But I think that, like, you're 5-2. It's a great start. There's no one else in that division that really scares you. Keep playing their brand of football and they'll be fine.
They could have been in the same hole as Aaron Rodgers and not reading anything, and they would have got their asses
This is
handed
true.
to them.
I predicted the Dolphins Lions Super Bowl no less than 3 times this week. I would actually say like 15
double
times.
Brinson jinx.
15 times, and both teams lost by double digits this week. I'm not sure why I thought it would be smart to have the Lions as a best bet and not just take. I should have taken the Ravens and the Eagles as 2 of my best bets for sure.
All right. Well, get your hands on that time machine and make that happen. In the meantime, we're going to Foxborough. What did the kids say? Give flowers to a young man named McCorkle Jones. Actually, we're going to talk about the Bills, the team they somehow beat. Mac Jones led a last-second comeback to, sweet mercy alive. You shouldn't have to say that the Patriots did everything they could to give this game to Buffalo, because Buffalo should have beat them like the Ravens beat the Lions. Kendrick Bourne fumbled that play on the penultimate drive, if you want to use a fancy word, that allowed the Bills to score. But you can't give Mac Jones that much time. Bill Belichick won his 300th game. He was extremely interested in talking about it afterwards. He said maybe 2.5 words. I'll just leave you with this. The highest completion percentage in a game in Patriots history, my man Mac Jones is 3rd behind some guy named Tom Brady who did it twice. On the other side,
what games were those for Tom, by the way?
2014, he completed 85.7%. 2009, Tom Brady completed 85.3%. And McCorkle, 83.3% today. And I'll leave you with this, and then Brinson, you can defend this Bills team that you've been defending all the way to the death. The Lions are out of the cage. They're running furiously at you in the middle of the gladiator ring. Brace yourself. So listen, we all know this, but I'll just to recap. The Bills lost in week 1 to Zach Rogers. Then they won 3 straight games by 28 plus points. And then they've led for 9 minutes and 53 seconds in the last 3 games. Went to London, and as Breech noted as our overseas correspondent, they got there literally 12 minutes before the game. Last week, they should have lost to the Giants. And this week, they did lose to the previously 1-win New England Patriots. Take the floor, Brinson.
I mean, I recall, boy, what's that? I'm getting an urgent news bulletin that we, no, I got nothing. Look, I mean, my the Bills are fine take aged almost as well as my Dolphins Lions Super Bowl vision of Dolphins and Lions in the Super Bowl.
I feel much better about the Lions and Dolphins. A lot better.
For sure. The Bills are 4-3. Their losses are not great. Don't get me wrong. You lose to the Jets. You lose overseas to the Jaguars. Losing to the Patriots in New England is just real bad and
unacceptable, I think, is the word.
And I want to take a little bit of ownership here for including the Bills minus 8.5 on the road in a divisional game as one of my best bets. I do think at one point the Bills were leading enough where weren't the Bills up? No, they were getting blown out the whole time. Is that right? They were getting blown out the whole time. They were 20.
Real quick. The Bills were losing the entire game.
They're up 25-22. They're up 25-22
until they scored with 1 minute and 58 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
You can't give Mac Jones that much time, Breech.
I was thinking, like, believe me, I was watching that game thinking a little pick 6 for a backdoor Bills cover, and like the world is. If you took the Pats, you're furious. I'd pick the Pats against the spread every single week until this week, so I'm pretty pissed about this one. But yeah, like, look, I mean, it's just sort of a reminder that one, any given Sunday. 2 divisional matchups count. That's 300. By the way, that's 300 wins for Bill Belichick. He's been working for a few weeks to try and get there in his career. Just the 3rd coach to do that. And like, we got a great Mac Jones game. And I mean, there has been more heat on the Patriots the last couple of weeks. Like, Bill Belichick on the hot seat has just been a thing. And you go out and you beat the Bills. You're just 2-5. You're not necessarily a good football team, but it's sort of a season saver. And kind of like, you just pull a little air out of the balloon and everybody take a breath here, I think.
Hey, Breech, let me throw you some fun facts.
Yeah.
Let me throw some fun facts and you can take this away here. So the Patriots snapped a streak of 17 straight games without scoring 28 plus points. If you're Sean McDermott, defensive mind, looking a lot like Brandon Staley, what the Sam Hill is going on where you're letting this team score 29 points on you?
Where you held the Miami Dolphins to 20 points. You held your team last week, the Giants, to single digits, and the New England Patriots scoring 29. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know how Mac Jones decided to have his MVP game. He pulled this one out of his behind. I mean, this was the Mac Jones the Patriots thought they were going to have all season, and he finally shows up in week 7. So I'm sure Belichick is a little bit happy about this because now he doesn't have to answer questions about whether Bailey Zappi is going to start and whether Mac Jones is going to end up on the bench. The one thing about the Bills, though, that does concern me at least a little bit is that Josh Allen, his shoulder got banged up against the Giants. So he's been dealing with kind of shoulder injury, and they're like, it's a non-issue. And that's kind of what happened last year with his elbow injury, where the Bills offense just took a huge step back after that. And every week it was like, no, he'll be fine. And every week it was, he's looking less accurate and he's trying to force things in there that he can't force anymore because he's not 100% healthy, where, Josh Allen can throw a laser 45 yards downfield on a dime, but when he's banged up, he can't do that when his shoulder's bothering him or his elbow or whatever the injury is. And so he's trying to do things that he can't do because of the injury. And we saw him throw an interception against the Patriots. We saw him throw a few inaccurate passes. So I would say there's a little bit of concern with Josh Allen, especially because they have to turn around and play on Thursday night this week. Not that I do think they'll beat the Buccaneers, but just you get no break. You're going to get beat up. The Buccaneers have a decent defense. And so that would be my minor concern with the Bills, that you got to make sure Josh Allen's 100% healthy.
I think he's 100%. Hold on. Let me just throw this at you, Brinson. Here's the question. So Dalton Kincaid was targeted 8 times. Dawson Knox is out of the picture, apparently. Stephon Diggs targeted 12 times. Then James Cook, the running back. Let's keep scrolling. Gabe Davis, 1 catch for 6 yards. Yikes. This isn't working.
Yep. I mean, yeah, look, the offense, not great against the Pats at all. I mean, Stephon Diggs, 12 targets, 6 catches. When does Stephon Diggs catch 50% of his targets? Like that may be has me a little nervous about the Allen thing that Breech mentioned, because like that sort of accuracy is extremely concerning. And then you have maybe Dalton Kincaid 8 for 8, right? But like if he and Diggs are that far off, and you have Gabe Davis 5 for 1, like you're talking about guys who are generally going to be a little bit further down the field in terms of where he's targeting them. That's concerning to me. I think the bigger worry I would have, at least with the Bills, though, is that the injuries on defense. Like if you're letting Mac Jones in the past toss up 29 on you. And this is, by the way, this coming into this game, the Bills had won 6 of the last 7 against the Patriots, and they were 5-2 against the spread, and had really, like, just since Tom Brady left, had basically said, all right, you don't have Tom Brady anymore. We're stomping you, and we're making sure you know that this is our division now. And so this win, like, I don't know, the win game broke Sean McDermott's brain. I hope this one doesn't do the same thing.
Well, I mean, they lost. They should have lost to the Giants. They no-showed for the Jags. I don't even know if this is just a Patriots.
I'm telling you, like, there's concerns on the offense with Josh Allen and with the defense.
I just didn't want you to besmirch McCorkle's name. I mean, and I'll be honest, as I was watching the game, as you were watching it, I said, please, for the love of God, throw the ball Mac Jones and throw it close to the ground, because it is going to get intercepted, you wily SOB. All right. Just so you guys know ahead of time, Mac Jones probably get my MVP at the end of the show. For now, though, going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how good this Browns team really is right after this.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right. Welcome back. Like anyone goes anywhere in a podcast. Thank you for listening.
I did.
To the
I went to the bathroom for 4
sorry.
seconds.
Of course. All right.
Do you my pants.
I was asking a question.
Do I wear a diaper while we podcast? Maybe.
No, I was going to ask Wilson if you ever, like, when you come back from like a commercial break on a podcast, you're like, welcome back to the Big Six Podcast. Ryan Wilson here with John Breech and Will Brinson. It's like, we didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I just said. That's why I felt silly.
I know. I agree. I'm with you. I agree with you completely.
Oh, yeah.
Wilson, I'll start going somewhere during the break so you can feel good about saying it.
Yeah, Harry will cut back early from commercial. You'll be walking in circles behind your desk.
I guess I do leave and like fill up my cup during commercials sometimes.
Yeah, I was actually talking specifically to you, so actually it does work.
You go pee. You haven't gone to the bathroom on a podcast in forever.
I don't think you can say that word anymore. FCC violation.
Bathroom.
All right. And also, it's ageism, making fun of old people who are having to go to the bathroom a lot.
Ooh.
It's real. Browns Colts also real.
Mm.
Browns 39, Colts 38. This game had 9 lead changes. And Breech, I got to come to you first because this made me literally laugh out loud. This is what old people say now. Old people say LOL on Facebook, Breech. If I read this headline to you in week 7, or read to you over the summer and said this is what's going to happen in week 7, tell me who you think I would be talking about. First Colts quarterback in team history with 2 pass touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in one game.
I mean, 100% I would have bet all my money at the time that was Anthony Richardson, except I'm the last person to ask because maybe I would have guessed Gardner Minshew since I'm his number one fan on the planet. I mean, in the first half, I was actually going to text you guys and be like, what? First round pick for Gardner Minshew?
I was feeling the same way. So this is more about the Browns, but I thought that was funny. Gardner giveth and Gardner taketh away, but I think that also applies to taketh away in terms of Myles Garrett and how dominant he was in this game and how he had to drag this team in the first half at least over the finish line because Deshaun Watson, and maybe we should start here. What's the deal with Deshaun Watson? It looked like he got concussed. Kevin Stefanski didn't bring him back in after the first half. They went with P.J. Walker, who was just doing crazy things because that's how P.J. Walker operates. Later, they said it was his shoulder with Deshaun. So I don't know what the deal is, but he did not come back in. He was on the sidelines cheering happily for his team as they won. This team feels like a playoff team, but they have to get the quarterback situation sorted out. So how do you get the quarterback situation sorted out?
So this has been lingering, and I've mentioned it a few times, and I mean, Lord knows everything else I've mentioned a few times this week has been dead ass wrong. So like, take this with a grain of salt. But 2 weeks ago when Deshaun didn't play, Kevin Stefanski, and I need to go like find the actual quote, but it like threw me for a loop when I read it. It was like Stefanski was basically like, so he didn't play against before the bye, he didn't play against the Ravens, right? And then he didn't, and then he was also like, you'd think like come back from the bye.
He was medically cleared to play against the Ravens.
Exactly. And Kevin Stefanski said Deshaun made the decision not to play. And now Brady and Deuce push back at this when I mentioned it because they're like dude, like medically cleared. They're like medically cleared to play can mean a very different thing from you feel comfortable playing. But the way I read it, just sort of reading between the lines, is that Deshaun, because of what it costs to acquire him and what they paid him, and the fact that it can't be like, well, we're gonna withhold your contract for incentive. Like, he has no incentives. His contract is fully guaranteed. That he sort of has kind of a little bit of freedom to say, I don't think I'm going to play today. And I just wonder if hearing that a couple weeks ago, and then he skips the Niners game, a very good defense, and then like he gets out of there against the Colts, he's like, I don't know. I don't know. Like that's a kind of I don't want to question his motives.
He hit his head on the turf and he had to come out.
I'm just saying he's been medically cleared since September and has chosen not to play football and then left this game early. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think he talked to the media leading up to this game, and he had said he didn't want to put the Browns in a bad spot. So if he can't throw the ball 50 yards downfield or hit the long out routes, that he didn't feel comfortable playing, which again, there's a disconnect in the locker room then if the coaching staff, I'm not going to say expects him to play, but would prefer that he's out there, and he's like, I can't do it. That seems like it's going to create a little bit of an issue. And the problem for the Browns is that they're locked into this guy for $230 million. There's no way out. He's guaranteed. This is guaranteed money. This isn't Russell Wilson where you can get out in 2 years, which again, and it feels like because Russell Wilson's gotten so much flack and Deshaun Watson kind of got a flyer for the end of last season with his bad 6 games. It was like, well, he's rusty. Well, now we're in week 7. There's no more rust. You are either able to play or you're not. And so far, Deshaun Watson has not been able to play. Luckily for the Browns, their defense has been so phenomenal. Wilson, you mentioned Myles Garrett. He had 2 forced fumbles, 2 strip sacks in the first half, blocked a field goal, almost single-handedly won this game. He was the
They also gave up 456 yards and 6.8 yards per play to Gardner Minshew. So, they were incredible.
Right. But they also forced 4 turnovers by Gardner Minshew, which was really the difference in the game. And so, you got to give the Browns defense a ton of credit because they won the game there. And it is, if you're the Browns fan or if you're looking at the Browns, you can look at the past 2 weeks in 2 ways. You can be like, well, the Browns got lucky and this team should be 2-4. Or you can say that's what good teams do in the NFL. All games are close. They beat the 49ers on 2 because they missed a kick, and they beat the Colts by 1 because PJ Walker actually came through and drove down and got them a touchdown. So I think the Browns defense is going to be a problem for the rest of the NFL. If they can get the QB situation figured out, they're going to be good. But if they can't,
that's a big if though, right?
What do wins over Wilson say the odds are for the Browns to make the playoffs?
They're currently inside the bubble, I believe.
Absolutely, they're the 5 seed as of right now, I believe.
So that division, the Breech's Ravens are in
6
first place. I think it's probably percentage wise. I would put it at like 9.4%.
Well, I have the odds in front of me. What do you think the Browns are like? Obviously, yes or no make the playoffs.
Oh yeah, yes. It's 50-50 the way I laid it out. I'll say
yes is minus 205.
Yeah,
Ooh.
see, there you go.
That's pretty. Just put that in context.
That's a lot for a team with no quarterback.
For real.
Yeah.
Shout out to
so
Jim
like
Ford.
I'm trying to find another. So like the Steelers, who are also 4-2, are minus 110 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that checks out. Quickly, I should point this out. And Breech, I just push back quickly, and I think you agree with this. I just think you're speaking generally maybe about Cleveland, but I think all of us last year were not impressed with Deshaun, rusty or not. And the thing that I kept saying, and you guys may have said it as well, I never was sure he was going to get back to the form that we saw when he was at his peak. You agree with that?
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the whole thing. But and we all thought he was bad. We just gave him a flyer and said, he hasn't played football in a year and a half. So we're going. Yeah, exactly. And so real quick, though, I'm glad someone in the comments just mentioned it. I got to shout out Dustin Hopkins, who not only hit 3 field goals of 50 yards or more in this game. Absolutely insane that he did that. 2 40-yarders and a 58-yarder. But he set an NFL record. He became the first kicker in NFL history to hit a field goal of at least 50 yards in 5 straight games. No kicker had ever. Justin Tucker didn't do that. Jim Breech didn't do it. No kicker ever had hit field goal 50 yards or more in 5 straight games. So Dustin Hopkins, maybe he can be their quarterback. I don't know. What do you think, Wilson?
That's impressive, but not as impressive as what the Chiefs did to the Chargers. And by Chiefs, I mean Travis Kelce, who apparently plays really good when his girlfriend comes to the games. A lot of times in high school, your girlfriend comes, you get nervous, you throw a bunch of interceptions or drop a bunch of passes. That ain't how Travis Kelce rolls. The bigger issue, and this is Harry's talking point here, and this defense actually absolutely got after it. Justin Herbert. Hey, fun story. Remember when we were crushing the Dolphins for taking Tua 1 pick ahead of Justin Herbert? It just goes to show, like, you don't know what you don't know. And year 1 doesn't mean anything. Year 2 sometimes doesn't. And I love Justin Herbert, but Tua, credit to him for bouncing back. But Herbert has 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in his last 3 games. He's under 60% in 3 straight games. The Chargers somehow, with Kellen Moore, are averaging 19.3 points per game in their last 3 games. I mean, what is going on there with Justin Herbert? And I guess you can blame the finger on his non-throwing hand, but it certainly feels like it's more than that. And the bigger takeaway, and this is what Harry was getting at in the rundown, I'll come to you first, Breech. This Chiefs defense, we know about the Chiefs offense. This Chiefs defense and Steve Spags, they're absolutely getting after it.
Yeah, real quick on Herbert. We talked a little bit last week about, is he anti-clutch? Is it fair to say that after that game, after what he did in week 1 against the Dolphins, and now you look at this game where he went, I think, 7 of 16 for 100 yards with 2 interceptions in the second half. When your team needs you the most, those aren't numbers that you can afford to have, especially when you're in a shootout with the Chiefs. And the Chargers were absolutely in this game if they could have done literally anything in the second half. And one of Herbert's interceptions came when the Chargers had driven down inside the Chiefs' 10-yard line on their first possession of the second half. So they had a chance to tie the game, but Herbert threw an interception, so it didn't happen. But the Chiefs' defense played a part in that because they have been surprisingly good. It's like you get Chris Jones back in there, and now I think the Chiefs, the stat is that the Chiefs are the only team in the NFL that hasn't given up at least 21 points in a single game this year.
They go 21 to the Lions.
Or they haven't given up over 21 points in a single game this year.
Since then, 21 to the Lions, 9 to the Jags, 10 to the Bears, 20 to the Jets, 20 to the Vikings, 8 to the Broncos, and 17 to the Chargers. Those are some not explosive offenses. Like, you're talking about like sub 21 against the Vikings, Chargers, and Jags. I mean, the Chiefs offense hasn't really clicked completely yet, but my goodness, this reminds me, I mean, this is, I guess, easy to say, but it reminds me of the second half of the season when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and sort of like that 2006 Colts team that won the Super Bowl as well, where, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, you don't have Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne at wide receiver, but you got Travis Kelce, and you have enough. Rashee Rice has been playing pretty well. Marcus Valdes-Scantling caught a touchdown. So, like, you have enough pieces there where this offense is really good. Isaiah Pacheco running the ball well, but the defense is like playing awesome, but you're not entirely sure. There's Chris Jones is great, but there's not like TJ Watt flying off the edge or Nick Bosa flying off the edge like every 3 plays where something like it's just a really good team effort. And Spags gets tons of credit because he's done this before. He's done it in different ways, but it just feels reminiscent. Or even last year's defense when they win the Super Bowl, and they have a bunch of rookies in the secondary, and they kind of came on strong in the second half. It feels like the only question is is the defense playing too well too early? Can they keep this up for the full season? If they do, this team's going to win 14 games.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing as playing too well too early. I mean,
right. I'm just saying, do you think, they get the Broncos and the Dolphins next, and they're bye, Eagles, Raiders, Packers, Bills, Pats, Raiders, Bengals, Chargers. I mean, surely they're going to give up 3 or 4 21-point games. I don't know, man. I mean, they're playing good football.
Nick Bolton did leave with a wrist injury, so we'll see what happens with that. That, I think, was a dislocated wrist. So that's kind of important. But again, every team is injured at this point of the year. I think the bigger issue is not for Kansas City, because when we're saying things like, can this defense continue to kick people's asses, that's a good conversation to have. The other question is what's going on with this Chargers team. I mean, it is just one thing after the next. They can't beat the Chiefs no matter what, and they're losing the teams they shouldn't lose to, and it is an absolute hot mess. And if your best player is playing like, Mac Jones on his worst day, you got some things to sort out. So,
I mean, do you think Justin Herbert's starting to wonder if he's clutch?
no, I think Justin Herbert's really good. I just think that he's pressing. He lost Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson.
Or do you think he's going to send some anonymous emails in, like maybe we should get a new coach?
I mean, he may not be anonymous about it. I don't know, because it's just not working.
He may do like a SoFi commercial. He's like, sure.
Yeah.
He may have been just fired from the Broncos or just fired from the Chargers. And no, I mean, I don't know. This is a manhandling. I mean, they scored 34 against the Dolphins.
It was actually close for 2/3 of that game. It was competitive, and then much like the Dolphins game at the end, it got away from them.
Yeah,
now
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think it got away from them because of the quarterback.
The pick in the end zone was just horrendous.
No, it wasn't great. Was not great.
No, I mean there was a chance to tie it at 24, right?
Yep.
You can't throw. You just can't. You can't throw that interception at that point in time. I think it was on third down, but that's still not an excuse. Like, you've got to get the field goal. You got to cut it to 4. Or let Staley go for it. I mean, Justin Herbert plays a bad football right now.
All right, speaking of bad football, and this was funny because turns out I actually did read The Athletic, and I was reading to see what they were saying about Matt LaFleur and just that team before the game. And one of the questions in the headline, I don't know if it was a mailbag or not, was whether Matt LaFleur was on the hot seat. I was like, wow, that is pretty crazy given that we're 7 weeks into the post-Aaron Rodgers era. But he ain't getting a lot of help from this team. He said last week execution was a problem, and it wasn't necessarily saying, I think I give this team a pass. We have to play better. And, Jordan Love had an interception at the end there. Wasn't asked to do a whole bunch, only threw for 180. Aaron Jones played. That was sort of a surprise. And he did some things when he's out there, but it was mostly A.J. Dillon doing the heavy lifting. We saw some of the young players, Luke Musgrave, Romeo Dobbs, make plays. Jaden Reed, the day 2 pick. Dontavian Wicks, the day 3 pick. That said, if you lose to the Broncos, you got to have some serious soul searching. So, Breech, is Jordan Love the answer? Are we going in another direction? Can you fix this? Where are we on the Green Bay Packers? Because you mentioned the NFC North, sort of wide open.
Well, the one thing I will say is that I remember last year, maybe it was the Super Bowl year for the Bengals, where it seemed like we had a weekly debate about whether Zach Taylor was a good coach or not, and we could never figure it out. And I think Matt LaFleur is going to be the new coach we debated about, because the Packers were so eager to kick Aaron Rodgers out the door. And the thought was that, hey, well, obviously they have somebody better in the bullpen. They want to get him out there, and they're ready to move on with their future franchise quarterback. And that just has not been the case. I mean, Jordan Love has not been great. He hasn't been horrible, but he's been really bad in the first half of games. And so the Packers have always been trailing. And then the other part of this is he's running Matt LaFleur's offense. So you've got to pin some of it on the head coach. And we're talking about a team that was coming off a bye. The Packers were coming off a bye. You get to play the Broncos, a team that scored 9 points last week.
The second worst defense by DVOA in the history of the stat.
In the history of the stat, a team that gave up 70 points in week 3, a team that gave up 35 points to the Commanders in week 2, which is like giving up 70 to a normal team. A very, very bad defense, and the Packers just could not do anything. And so I think you have to be concerned if you're a Packers fan. I think you have to be concerned if you're on that coaching staff. And the one thing I will say is you can't bench Jordan Love. That's not an option. You got to let him. This is the guy you signed up with. You got to let him finish this season. See what happens, see if he grows, see if he gets better, and then you make a decision at the end of the year. So maybe they win their next 10 games and Jordan Love looks like an MVP. I don't know, but right now he doesn't look good. So what do you think, Brinson? You bench him, or you
no,
right?
You can't bench him. I think the thing about LaFleur that's interesting is, like, every time Brady Quinn always talks about this, and you hear other people talk about it too. Like, when Matt LaFleur came to the Packers, he basically walked into the Aaron Rodgers FU double middle finger, like, anti-Jordan Love tour. He was handed a really pissed off Aaron Rodgers. And by all accounts, Aaron Rodgers, I think this is pretty obvious. Aaron Rodgers had complete and total freedom to do whatever he wanted at the line of scrimmage, right? Obviously. But so like there is some school of thoughts like, do we know what Matt LaFleur's offense really is? Because Aaron Rodgers is running it, but he's also just doing what Aaron Rodgers wants at the line of scrimmage. And so now you have this quarterback in Jordan Love who's actually running the LaFleur offense. I'm not like blaming LaFleur because I do think Jordan Love, and look, I'm not crapping on Ryan here at all, but like the 2 weeks in, it's like, well, I mean, Jordan, because your bold prediction was Jordan Love will have a better season than Rodgers. And it was like, this might be like the 1 weekend. It was like, this is a freebie after they blow out the Bears. It's just like Love reminds me exactly of what he was at Utah State, where will have these little hot streaks and then just get erratic as hell. And like the bad is real bad and the good is enticing, but we haven't really seen him like completely put it together yet. For context, in Rodgers' first year as starter with the Packers, 16 games, 6-10, 63.6% completion, 4,000 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. And I do remember people being like, all right, that wasn't a great year, but we feel like we've got the guy. Definitely does not feel like that with Jordan Love right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they're picking in the top 10, they're going to have some serious conversations about where they're going. I was actually
if only for contractual reasons.
Yeah, he's on a
like it's not like Jordan Love's on his first year of his rookie deal. Like you gotta like if you want to keep him around, you have to pay him actual
right. Yeah, I think he's on a 2-year short-term deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right, but they gave him that extension that they can get out of after. I mean, probably after this season. I think the dead cap next year's like $12 million, something around there. So it's not like they're locked to him, and he's only under contract through 2024. So
right. I'm just saying, I mean, like this guy he's. And look, they've had injuries on the offensive line and whatnot, but the receivers are all young. But I mean, like, he was completing 55.6% of his passes in 2023 coming into this game, and managed to go 21-31. Like he's like you can't teach accuracy, and it hasn't really borne out, over the last 5 or so weeks.
We shall see. Actually, I like Jordan Love, so hopefully it works out for him. But it doesn't matter if I like him or not if he keeps throwing the ball to the other team. Shout out to Russ Wilson for winning a football game. Somehow Russ isn't the problem on that team, so that's a positive development, I guess.
He's just playing average football. That's it. Like and nobody else is. So you're like, it's not bad. It's not good. Whatever. It
is what it is. Right. We're too busy yelling about Deshaun Watson and other quarterbacks who are playing terribly. So yeah, Russ, just stay in the middle. All right. Speaking of average football, I mean, we're living in a world. We're going to Los Angeles in case you're keeping score on your map at home, Breech, where the Steelers had a home game basically at SoFi Stadium against the Rams. We're living in a world where the Steelers have the same record as the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins could play the Steelers 100 times, and the aggregate score would be 40-4. And that'd be 2 safeties, no points scored by Matt Canada's offense.
And the Steelers would somehow win like 6 of the games with 4 points.
Right. And they'd still come out of Matt Canada would get an extension out of it. So let me just read you some stats, and then Brinson, you can defend.
Before, I mean, do you want to like calm your nerves, take a break, and rethink the Matt Canada thing, or like either way?
Why did Harry want us to take a break?
Oh, I was yeah. Let's take a break.
Sorry, Harry, I missed it. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll tell you about how the Steelers snuck a win out at SoFi Stadium. Right after this.
Get your team ready to move.
I'm ready. Welcome, enjoy the show.
Vamos.
Celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month.
I don't mind that.
With stories of heroes.
Everything's gonna be just fine.
Home.
I love it here. This town. The people.
And honor.
You need to remember what you're fighting for.
Celebrate today. And every day.
Oh, cheers to that. Salud.
Explore the One Mountain Una Familia collection on Paramount Plus. Stream now.
All righty. Here's some things that keep Sean McVay up at night, and we'll talk about the last series that will certainly keep him up at night. At one point during this game, the Rams had 28 minutes to 60 minutes time possession. The Steelers defense was on the field the entire time, and they were gassed. The Rams finished 9 of 16 on third down. The Steelers only 4 of 12. The Rams had 1 interception. It was T.J. Watt just going crazy. T.J. Watt, he thought that Joe Burrow was playing the way he was playing defense. He almost ran it back for a touchdown. They gave the Steelers a first down at the 7-yard line. And as Daryl Johnston mentioned during the telecast, it's not very often you get 7-yard drives. The Steelers offense needs to start doing things. And then we fast forward. Somehow the running game gets going. Somehow the Rams stall in the second half. And then we get deep into the game. 2 minutes, 12 seconds to go. The Rams are out of timeouts because Sean McVay is terrible with timeouts. He used one early in the second half. I was like, why are you doing that? 4th and goal from the Rams 46-yard line. And Kenny Pickett is a lot of things, but he is not Jalen Hurts. They tried the tush push, and he probably got negative yards. The guy the side judge who put the spot down, clearly is a Steelers fan because they gave him a first down. And Brinson, because it was at 2:12 and because the Rams had no timeouts, it was not going to be an automatic review. And then when they came back from the 2-minute warning, the Steelers had to kneel out and they won the game. The ball was at the 46, as I mentioned. There's a very good chance you would imagine that Matthew Stafford would either use Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp to find his way down the field, or Darrell Henderson, who ran for 4 million yards, but that was not afforded to him. So what did it make of this Rams team, who they had a loss sort of handed to them? But as Sean McVay said after the game, he said we did some things leading up to that he said the right things. But, I mean, there's no way in God's green earth the Steelers should have left that game with a win.
Yeah. Pretty disappointing for the Rams.
I think so. Absolutely.
Well, by the way, so we mentioned what we say the Ravens were, or the Browns are minus 205 to make the playoffs. Wait, did I tell you what Pittsburgh? Yeah, Pittsburgh's minus 110. Like they're 4-2 and they're even money to make the playoffs. Pittsburgh feels very much, and like I'm not like trying to crap on the Steelers. Just like, I mean, Wilson, you would say this too. I think. I mean, like they feel like very like they're negative 24-point differential and they're 4-2.
Their offense is terrible. I mean, that's not
it's pure smoke and mirrors. And like I think it was like more last week or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, it was Matt Canada. They scored that touchdown pass to George Pickens, and it's like everyone's ripping Matt Canada because he didn't celebrate right away. I think he was just like, "Oh my God, please no flags, please no flags." There's no way. That was not the play I called, not the play I designed. Kenny just went rogue. Just no flags, and like I'm gonna maybe take credit for this and like clap and act like that's what I called. And then this week, like he looked like he's like, "Come on, let's go, let's go!" Like this feels like this is like NFL Iowa, where Brian Ferentz has to get 7 wins and score 25 points a game, or else he loses his job. And it's you watching him, and you're like, this is not going to happen. And they just keep winning games somehow.
Any thoughts, Breech, about your schoolmate, Sean McVay?
I will say about my schoolmate, Sean McVay, is that he needs to hire someone. Sean, if you want to call me, it's fine, to help him use his timeouts, because the timeout usage is not just this week. It is literally all the time. If sometimes you can bet on the sports books what coach is going to use a timeout first, always bet McVay. It is free money. The guy just loves using timeouts. And so what actually happened here is 2 plays before that 4th and 1. So the Steelers had, the first down on that final possession where they ran down the clock. So the Rams used their first timeout in the third quarter. They used their second timeout on a 1st and 10, where the Steelers got 2 yards. They used their third timeout on a 2nd and 8, where the Steelers got 0 yards. And then 2 plays later is when the Kenny Pickett thing happened. So literally they used that final timeout 2 plays later. You can do that in the first half. You have to have a timeout at the 2-minute warning so this doesn't happen to you. Just keep one, because it's just as good after the 2-minute warning. Your goal is to try and save 40 seconds. And so you save the 40, whether it's on the front side or the back side. But really it's the third quarter timeout that bit them in the butt. And the other thing I will say is that the Rams dug their own grave here. You had one of the top 5 kickers in the NFL, and Matt Gay. You let him walk in free agency. Then you went out and signed the guy who had a meltdown in the playoffs last year, Brett Maher. And all Brett Maher did was miss 2 field goals in this game. He has now missed multiple field goals in 3 games this year. He is the only kicker in the NFL who has missed multiple field goals in 3 different games. And that's just that. And he missed an extra point. So that's what you get for bringing in a guy who, look, kicker snap. It happens. You miss a few. You just mentally break, and it's tough to get it back. It's the Chuck Knobloch thing with the throws.
Steve Sachs, if you're old.
Yeah, Steve Sachs is just, he doesn't completely have it back mentally. Maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't. But the Rams are riding this wagon, this bumpy wagon that's headed for a cliff, and they're like, oh, we don't care. We'll hope it works. So
call timeout, John.
Yeah, Maher's definitely been an issue, and I'll be interested to see if they keep him through this week, if he's their kicker in week 8.
All right, 2 more we'll get to these sort of quickly here. Man, the Giants and the Commanders was something that when you punish your kids, you make them watch this. 18 combined punts. Breech, you probably watched that game naked, but everyone else was very saddened by that. But I want to talk specifically, and Breech, I'm going to ask you this because you have great experience with, and actually I do sort of too, with young quarterbacks playing behind offensive lines that refuse to block for them. I'm talking about Joe Burrow in your case. Sam Burrow. They wish. Sam Howell was sacked 6 more times. He's been sacked 40 times this season, second most by any quarterback through 7 games. The winner, of course, is David Carr, and David Carr held the record his rookie season 2002 at 43 at this point, and then he did it again in 2005. He had 37. How did the Bengals fix it, and how did the Commanders fix it, or is this something that people have to lose their jobs over, and it's going to have to happen over a year or two?
Well, I mean, there's a few ways to fix it. I don't know if the Commanders can do any of it. One, you get your ground game going. You say, hey, Brian Robinson, we need you to carry the ball 47 times. Antonio Gibson, you need to carry it 42 times. We can't throw passes because our quarterback's getting killed. You'd start adding a lot of screens into your game, but then defenses will catch on to that, so you can't do that all the time. And the other thing is, like, Sam Howell has to be better. Not every one of these sacks is on the offensive line. I saw most of this game today. I would say of the 6 sacks, 2 were his fault. And that's still getting sacked 4 times, which is not good. But he's just not. I would say that Eric Bieniemy is probably frustrated with Sam Howell just because he just ignores some of his first reads sometimes, and then the pressure's there, and he's sacked, and that's it. Or he tries to run around, do something, and he's sacked, and that's it. So not all of these on the offensive line, but it doesn't matter. It's a combination that has led to him being the second most quarterback in NFL history through 7 weeks. And if they don't fix it, they're not going to win many more games.
Yeah, and Irvin Magic Johnson, an eloquent tweeter if there ever was one, fired out this loquacious missive on his account. Disappointing 14-7 loss for my Commanders to the New York Giants. It's hard to win in the NFL when you only score 7 points, period. Which, is like kind of like just basically how Magic Johnson tweets, but also is notable because he, owns the Commanders as well, along with Josh Harris. And like, if my boss is tweeting out hard to win in the NFL when you only score 7 points, I'm getting my butt's hot, right? Like, you got to feel like you're sitting on a seat heater. So I think Ron Rivera in deep doo-doo, as Ryan Wilson would say.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be going well there. Someplace that is going well, but as Harry notes, it can't even. It's a Pyrrhic victory, as it were. Chicago. Great story for Tyson Bagent. Saw him at the Senior Bowl, Division II Shepherd. I will be honest. I watched him at the Senior Bowl and said, this kid is overwhelmed coming from D2, playing against a lot of these kids from Power 5 schools. Then I watched him in the preseason. He was absolutely balling out. The last game he played in college, and Rick Spielman and I talked about this on the With the First Pick podcast last week, was against Colorado School of the Mines, and they absolutely destroyed Shepherd. And 2021, Tyson threw 50-something touchdowns. 2022 threw 40-something touchdowns, threw for almost 10,000 yards the last 2 years in college. And here he is, taking it to the Raiders. You see Josh McDaniels' name trending on Twitter. But Brinson, I'll ask you this because you are the conspiracy theorist on this here podcast show.
Indeed.
The Bears are now 3rd in the draft order. Luckily, Carolina Panthers didn't play this week, so they're still winless, and they still hold the first overall pick, and they still traded that pick to Chicago, so they have that. But there's no longer a Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison marriage in the Bears' future because they're picking 3rd, maybe in their best interest in getting offensive linemen. But if you're the owner, are you having a conversation with Matt Eberflus? So you put the Division II kid out there, and you still won a football game.
I mean, we're sure Caleb Williams is good enough to definitely just cut bait on Justin Fields. Caleb Williams hasn't been great.
Yes,
Drake May wasn't great.
Caleb Williams has been amazing.
The last 2 weeks haven't been amazing. That's fine.
No, he has. The first half against Notre Dame was straight up dog.
He threw 3. Yeah, he threw 3. Yeah, it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, don't fall for the hype.
So I mean, like they're taking Caleb Williams.
I don't know. I would. They didn't.
If they have the opportunity.
They took Mr. Trubisky, so I don't know what they'll do.
True. So maybe they'll take Drake May. By the way, Drake May lost to Virginia as a 23.5-point home favorite on Saturday.
Not a great weekend for big name quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, Drake May, Caleb Williams. Everyone's losing. My point to you though is, should the Bears be trying to lose, or are they okay doing this?
Yeah, I think it's like you you need to win because you can't just be you can't be a loser franchise and expect to like suddenly start winning all like it doesn't turn around overnight when you lose a ton. Like look at the Lions, right? It had to sort of build to this. So yeah, I think
tanking though typically.
I'm pro tanking. Yeah, I just think the Bears. I think the Bears are stuck in that void where Matt Eberflus. The conversation might be, "Hey, you need to lose more," but also, "Hey, you're fired." So
he's gonna pull Lovie Smith on him, is what you're saying,
right? So I think he's like, or yeah, a major league. Like he's like, he can't afford to lose. I don't think so. I don't think that conversation. Also, George McCaskey's not smart enough to have that conversation. Yeah, probably a bad win for the Bears. You throw out a D2 guy and beat the Raiders with Brian Hoyer.
Brian Hoyer 0-13 in his last 13 starts, by the way.
And you dropped 30 on him. I mean, with a pick six. I don't. Yeah, bad win for the Bears. But the good news is you still have the Panthers pick.
Yeah.
And you know what, though? If you're the Bears, you don't need to tank just yet. You're in the NFC. You're only a game and a half out of a playoff spot. Just ride the train till the end of November. I mean, the Panthers are 0-6, and you're 2 games better than them now. So it's not even – you're not doing a good job of tanking if you want to tank. So I would –
and the Broncos and the Patriots – clearly not tanking after today. Like that was like, why do Belichick and Sean Payton suck all of a sudden? They have to be tanking. No, as it turns out, they're just sort of old and rinsed, if you will.
Oh, you guys want a fun fact real quick?
Yeah. I do.
So we know that Tyson Bagent went to Shepherd. I have been to a college football game that Shepherd played in.
Is that where you threw the touchdown pass that Neville?
No, it was a 75-yard punt.
My brother, I was like, I recognize that school, and my brother went to West Virginia Wesleyan, which is near Shepherd, and they play each other in football.
I think Bagent is actually from West Virginia. He went to the transfer portal after the 2021 season. He had some D1 offers from pretty big schools. He came back to Shepherd, and then he balled out until he ran into Colorado School of the Mines. But it's a great story, especially if you saw him at the Senior Bowl. Even if you watched the game when he played in the Senior Bowl, you're like, all right, this kid is not getting drafted. I know NFL teams liked him because of his size, and he gave a great interview after the game, so I'm happy for him. His dad, by the way, a professional arm wrestler. He has something like 18 titles. So if that's
do you know what Chris Berman's nickname for Tyler Bagent would be?
Tyson, know what?
Secret Bagent man.
Yeah. Is that true, or did you just make that up?
Somebody called him out on a telecast earlier. I heard it like on the TV. I don't know who it was.
One last thing. Think about this. Think about your
secrets.
BVPs while I tell you this thing. Perhaps the thing about tanking, like I don't think teams tank. There's too many moving parts. It's like conspiracy theories. I can pull it off. But the other thing is, and I mentioned it a second ago, don't forget Lovie Smith won that Week 18 game against the Jaguars, whoever was the Colts last year.
Yeah, Colts.
That got them CJ as opposed to Bryce. They wanted Bryce. They didn't like CJ during the process. They were thinking about taking Will Anderson, number 2.
Great
fell
point.
in their lap. And that it turns out, the Caesar Milan, if you're a dog person, says sometimes you get the dog you need, not the dog you want. They got the quarterback they needed, not the one they wanted. So just win football games and see what happens. Unless you're Zach Taylor and you get Joe Burrow falling in your lap and suddenly you're a Hall of Fame coach. All right.
I mean, remember the Chargers like, these fools gave us Justin Herbert and took Tua. And we thought they were right.
We all agree with that until about 2 weeks ago, too, though.
That's right. Exactly.
All right, Brinson VP.
I will give the Brinson VP to begrudgingly Russell Wilson.
That's the first,
I know.
That's the first award he's won in 3 years. Congratulations, Russ.
Look, 20 and 29, 194 to touchdown. I think we've seen enough out of Russ to say, like, all right, there's a little something there. That touchdown pass to the deep left touchdown pass to the end zone to Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Breech called him average, I think that's a compliment. I'm willing to go that far.
Right, but I didn't think we had average Russ still.
No,
in the tank.
that's right. I agree with that. All right, way to go, Russ. Breech VP.
I was gonna give it to Travis Kelce, but he's got Taylor Swift.
His life is too good. He doesn't need your
too good. So I'm gonna give it to Brinson, a very unexpected quarterback. Desmond Ridder. Look, he tried his best to lose his job today with 3 turnovers. He lost 3 fumbles in the red zone. 3 in the red zone.
3. I saw 2.
Okay. 2 at the 1-yard line. But you know what he did? He drove the Falcons down, and he got a game-winning field goal from Younghoe Koo. He set them up, and that's what you need. You save your job by winning that game, and now, despite your play, your team is still in first place in the NFC South, heading into week 8, and that's about all you can ask for if you're the Falcons. So I think Ritter might have saved his job with that game-winning drive, and good for him.
All right,
So
Russ.
go ahead and give us a third quarterback we didn't expect to see today,
I
Wilson.
can't believe Russ Ritter, and I can't believe Breech did this. I'm going with Younghoe Koo. That's the easy one, Breech. He had a 50-something plus yard.
How do you not take McCorkle?
I already talked about him earlier, and I can't believe Breech besmirched Younghoe Koo's name. So I will go with him. All right, that's it. Week 7, Sunday Night Super Friends is a wrap, but don't worry. See you back here next Sunday night. In the meantime, you can check us out, or check the Pick Six podcast out all week on YouTube at NFL on CBS, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Breech. Thanks to Brinson. Thanks to producer Harry. And thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. We'll see you guys later.